Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here. We are about to embark on what I'm calling music practice metamorphosis. This is a workshop about segmenting your music practice, and my name is Amy Sarasvati, and I'm happy to lead you through this material today. And before we get started, just to say you're welcome to put some comments in the chat and interact that way. There won't be a lot of interaction on this. This is a lot of just material. We'll be working with two people who have stepped up to examine their little segments, and in that sense there will be a little bit of interaction, but otherwise hopefully this material will really serve you as a musician and take a look at not only skill building and how to really break it down, but also emotionally and how we come across so many things as what I say hobby musicians. Most of us are not professional, money earning, that type of musician. We're hobby musicians, just like we would enjoy art or golf or any other hobby, and putting it in its context. So this is for our own pastime and enjoyment. And in any case, thank you for being here, and I hope that this workshop really helps you. I have a presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, and we're going to walk through it together. So here we go. Can everybody see it? Yeah. Okay, super. All right. So again, the concept of a metamorphosis, or the evolution of what happens before a butterfly flies out of its chrysalis and all of that, just really drew me in. And this particular graphic did too, because you can kind of see there's like a structure. There's a structure around this developing butterfly. And without that structure, the butterfly can't have anything to push against and build its muscle and learn how to do this and learn how to do that and finally break free of its structure and then fly. And this is very much like any hobby, but in our case, music. And what I learned about music practice from my students was they needed structure. And without that, we're kind of random in our efforts during our practice. So this is how this whole body of work got developed. As you can see here, we've got a number of things that we're going to cover. I'm going to just reduce this a little bit on my screen anywhere. There, we can see that. And this workshop is geared toward hobby musicians who desire to improve their music practice skills. It's a little gap that I have found between the desire to play your instrument, and even if you are working with a teacher and playing, it's like, how do we practice effectively? So in this workshop, we are going to cover all of the check marks here. I've highlighted the one that we're going to really be focusing on. Each of these could be its own workshop, and a few of them are their own workshop. But one of them, your desire to play music. And the second one, to recognize and remove obstacles. The third, get your game on. And don't forget the feedback loop. Having some fun with that. Learn to segment your music practice, the main course of the workshop. And then once we segment, what next? Interweaving your segments, and that's hopefully something that will really be helpful for everybody. And essentially what we're going to develop in this workshop is the three-part sort of, instead of music practice, kind of thinking as a ritual, just like we brush our teeth or we do things. We have a certain way that we do things, and what we're going to do is kind of shake up our music practice a little bit and develop some new parts to it. How we cue ourselves, that initial prompt, inner prompt, time to practice, and how to rewire that a little bit. And then the mini practice interweaving segments, and then an immediate reward, setting up an immediate reward. So that is what we're going to cover today. Okay, a little bit about me. This will be handed out. I'll be sending you this PDF, and if you're watching this after the fact, this will be available. So I won't go through every little bit of it, but what I want to say is I'm an author, I'm a teacher, and in addition to that, the sequence that happened in my author life is I had written the Learn to Play the Native American Style Flute book, and then I did get people asking how to practice, and that was a interesting thing, that people were having a hiccup around this. Oh, I don't know, you can see, oh, we'll practice this song. It's way too vague. So eventually what happened was writing The Musician's Heart Journey, and then this book here, The Musician's Practice Journal. And that's the work of the workshop today. So the workshop is one part of a larger picture, but that was the sequence of it. Very devoted to the healing arts, having been in it much of my professional life, but in my heart, I'm a flute player, and I love to teach people how to embrace their own, whatever sound you want to make, and helping to be the trail guide for that. All right. I'd say the only thing I want to say from this before we move on is my life's purpose is to teach people to play the music they love as a rewarding personal hobby, offering a tool for self-expression and personal development. Okay. This next one is our desire to play music comes from something deep inside. I was watching some masterclass intros the other day, and Carlos Santana of Santana said, go inside and get your sound. And I thought, that's it. The bottom line is, what is it that we want to play? What is it, the sound that we love to play? So this visual that you see on this slide, go on a vision quest of your wildest musical goal, is its own workshop, but and it is in the it'll be in the handouts, but it's also in the Musician's Practice Journal. And really what it is how we approach our practice can be driven by two things, sort of the stick or the carrot kind of concept, where the should, I should practice, and then what does that feel like, versus your desire that is propelling you forward. So we want to kind of transition the concept of that willpower is how we need to power our showing up for practice, but instead getting more in touch with our desire to play the sound we want to play. In addition to that, there are a number of obstacles we're going to look at today that still need to be removed, and deliberate practice habits. If you've heard of this deliberate practice concept, we're going to touch on it in our skill building today. But that concept of deliberate practice versus naive practice versus purposeful practice still needs to be established. So that'll be part of the workshop. Okay, get your pencil and your paper out. We're going to do a very quick journaling prompt. I'm setting up my timer. On Saturday mornings, we have a group, and we go through our plan for the week with the Musician's Practice Journal. Part of it is journal prompts. And so we're going to just do little 1-minute ones here, and that will kind of give us a stepping off point for the rest of the work today. So when we do this kind of work, I want you to be assured that no one is going to be asked to share. This is for your eyes only. So really let it out. Really express yourself on the page. The only rule is no shoulding on yourself. I should do this and I should do that. So that's going to get us down the path of willpower, and we're trying to switch lanes here into desire. So focusing with that pair of glasses on, if you will. Before we just start, you can put your pencil or pen down and your paper just for 1 minute. And this is a little ritual that you can start to build into your own practice. I call it a musical mantra, and there are a number of them. And without getting too technical about it, essentially we're inhaling to one concept or a word, and we're exhaling to another concept or a word, and it just helps us drop into that silent space of truth inside of us. So today we'll do that right now, and then we'll do our journal prompts. So just feel yourself relaxing in your chair or whatever you're sitting on, and bring your attention to your breath without changing anything. Just notice the rise and fall of the breath. And when you're ready, and if you're willing, on your inhale, allow the word to silently ride on the inhale musical, inhaling musical, and exhaling silently the word identity. Inhaling musical, exhaling identity. And there's nothing else to think of. Just shifting yourself into that meditative state for a moment. We'll take 3 more long, slow, deep breaths. Nice. And when you're ready, you can wiggle your toes, rub your hands together, pick up your pencil or pen and your paper. And for 1 minute, I've got a 1-minute timer started. Journal on this prompt, please. What sound do I love to listen to? What sound do I love to listen to? And while you're journaling, I'll play a little flute music. About 10 seconds left. And bringing that to a closure for right now. You can always come back to it later. The second prompt is, what am I working toward? We're putting this in the context of music. What am I working toward? 1 minute. About 10 more seconds. Bringing that to closure for now. You're halfway there. Keep going. Feel free to shake out your hand for a minute. Take a deep breath. Nice. Okay. Our third prompt. What am I working toward? No, that was the last one. Hold on. What matters to me most musically? That's the one. What matters to me most musically? Yeah. 1 minute. What matters to me most musically? About 10 more seconds. Bringing that to a closure for now. Deep breath, everybody. Yeah, just sort of cleanse the palate, the mental palate for a moment. And our final prompt. Why am I developing a new ritual around practicing music? Why am I developing a new ritual around practicing music? 1 minute. Dig in. Why are you here today? About 10 more seconds. And bring that to closure. Good. So we have a little bit of a starting point for what it means to you and why you are here. This shape of the pyramid and so forth that we see, what we're doing is we're sort of up in this realm right near of your wildest musical goal here, how it would impact your life. That's another great one to work with. And then we're doing nuts and bolts a little bit today. What specific steps do I need to take to make this goal my reality on a monthly, weekly, and daily basis? And our whole spirit of being here today is this idea to create a vision for yourself as a musician that ignites the fire in your belly. Okay. Here we go. Removing obstacles is probably the big work. And what I like to do is liken this for a moment to, I'm going to stop my screen share so we can sort of see each other a little bit more. Years ago, and maybe another lifetime ago, it feels like, I was in the fitness business. And I taught lots and lots of group exercise. And I was also a personal trainer. And a lot of the transferable skills from that work are showing up here. And what I want to talk about a little bit in terms of friction is when we want to go and get in better shape and we decide we're going to join a gym. Maybe the gym is your thing, maybe the gym is not your thing, but the idea is the gym as the analogy. And what I want to point out is there are a lot of things that are sort of one and done. Okay, so your decision that you want to get in shape. And then you decide you're going to join a gym in this case. So you might do a little research and you find a gym. Good. You go to the gym, you join the gym. Okay, that's a one and done. You don't have to do that again. There's a lot of parts of this that you do once and then you don't have to do it again. And the same for the music practice. So you can kind of start to sift this out a little bit. And then you may go get some gear, right? You got to get your sneakers, you got to get whatever you're going to work out in, a water bottle, your tunes, you got to do all those things. And then maybe you don't have any experience in a gym. So now you've got an orientation. They usually offer an orientation. So you meet with a personal trainer and that personal trainer says, okay, here are the parts, we're going to do warm up and then we're going to do cardio and then we're going to do strength, or maybe we reverse those orders depending on their philosophy. We're going to stretch. We're going to pick out some classes for you. And that's kind of like, if we can kind of use that analogy for what we're doing with music. So we've perhaps picked an instrument. We've done a lot of things that are one and done. And now when we go to the gym, so here are the two scenarios. We go to the gym. We didn't follow up with the orientation. We really don't know how the heart rate monitor works, whatever. And we decide we'll just sit on the recumbent bike, and that'll be good. We'll just do that, and we'll just do that for the day, and then we leave. But you know what? That was still, you showed up for the gym and you got something done. So there was some structure to it. Or maybe you did follow up with the orientation, and the trainer says, this is what to do. Go on the elliptical machine, set it to the setting of 3, and go for a minute and a half, and then at a minute and a half, move it up to 5 and go for 3 to 5 minutes on that. Okay, so that's your warm up. And then they go to the next part and they get specific. You're going to do these body parts, you're going to do this amount of weight, and you're going to do them this many times range. Cool. Then you're going to do this part, and then we're going to do this part. So I took those skills and I'm bringing them here. And that's exactly what we're going to do, is for the parts where we trip up. That's what we want to kind of look at. I have 2 more analogies really just to help people solidify this concept. And it is these 2. One is if you are ironing a shirt, if you've ever ironed a shirt before, okay, you get your shirt, you get your iron, maybe water, starch, whatever you got going on. And you've got a long part of the shirt and you quickly get through that. And then you've got the collar. And it's a mess and you got to spend some time, and it's just this little wrinkle and it's just this little part and it's just this little part. And that's kind of like segmenting, all right? So we don't want to spend or waste our time with the shirt anymore. The shirt is fine. We breeze through that. It's good. We're only going to focus on the parts that need to be ironed, okay? So use that as just sort of a starting point of what am I going to practice? Don't worry about the other parts. The other analogy I use is sanding. Now, I don't do a lot of sanding. Occasionally I have to sand something. But, you start off with like the really rough stuff and then you go to the more fine and so forth. But say you're sanding a little part of a table. You're refinishing a table. And you do this part. There's only like one real problem spot because, you got the table from a friend and they were giving it away. And they said, it's a great table. It's just this one little spot, So what you're doing is you're not worrying about the part that is good. Really just focusing on the part that needs help. So most of us don't have a ton of time in our lives to practice through every scale and every song and everything. If you do, great. But most of us have limited time. Say we have 5 minutes to practice. Say we have a half an hour to practice. So really zoning in on the wrinkle in the collar. The part of the table that needs to be sanded, the one part of the song, the 2 measures that are tripping us up. So we want to be able to play, somewhere over the rainbow on the flute, but there's this one passage. That's where you go. So you go to the gym and you're just doing that passage or whatever it is. So there's some analogies to work with, is not to waste your time on things that you've got already. Okay, good. I'm going to share my screen again and we are going to move right along. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So we're recognizing first, this is the first stage, and then removing obstacles. In every sort of religion or belief system, there's like a saint for removing obstacles. There's a different things. This one, if you know Ganesha, this is our Ganesha. This is a Hindu. This is the very powerful elephant, and in the Hindu tradition is the remover of obstacles. So hopefully our musical obstacles won't require the force of an elephant moving through, but it is the energy of that there are always obstacles, but recognizing what we can do with them to remove them. So the other word that people use is friction. Sometimes you hear that in trainings. Where's the friction? Who can relate to this? We're trying to get on a recorded call today, and our camera's not working. We can't quite get the sound right. That's friction, all right? And friction is the same thing that we encounter when we are learning to play music or refine music or improve what we are doing. And it gets in the way. So what else does it do? In our examples today, we're going to see how massive action was taken by someone, and then a small thing derailed them. And that's what happens to us. We do all these things and then we get derailed. So let's take a look at our music practice habits and where we have friction and where can we remove them, recognizing that some of them are one and done. Once I get this done, I don't have to deal with it again. Others are going to be more ongoing. Okay, and you've got your paper and pen in hand, so you can work on this a little bit interactively. So the idea is that we're going to be kind of like a detective in our own story and find the exact place that you got thrown off course. So these are places where often issues happen. If your goal is too big or too vague. So let's take I'm going to take like a 10-second thing, just bullet points as things come up, so you have an opportunity to write these down. Think about your goal and think about whether or not it's too big or too vague. Thinking about that musical identity, music mantra at the beginning, and thinking about what was the vision, or even just a little stirring that happened that you felt. So if your goal is too big or too vague, that's the big obstacle. It's like then you show up to practice and you don't know even where to start. And then when you find something that isn't, and say you've created some goals around it, refining the goals. So after you refine your goal, ask again, can you refine it more? Is your practice itself right now, again, no shooting on ourselves, but just being aware, is our practice random, wandering, and is it lacking focus? And if so, you can use some of the principles today to refine it. So there's this concept, this is a wonderful area of research, which is around this naive, purposeful, or deliberate practice. Book that I can refer you to is Peak by Anders Ericsson, and the research that he did around athletes and musicians. And a lot of this is influenced and informed by that work. If you're not able to follow through, you've got your goal, maybe you've got it refined, and you're not able to follow through, look for friction. Oftentimes, it is just that you really don't want to do that. If your desire isn't there, give yourself permission to do something else. Play a different instrument. Play a different style. Do something entirely different as your hobby, whatever it is. But the idea is that you have a desire, you have a creative spirit that wants to be expressed. And to tap into that is going to be the motivation. So really think about, wow, do I really want to do what I've said I wanted to do. It may just be that someone else wanted you to do that, or you think you should do that, and that might not be really your truth. Okay, these are just areas of friction. Another one is other people in your house creating obstacles. So this taps into the emotional piece a little bit. I have some stories of direct family members that were very, very critical of me when I was learning to play flute. I mean, one of them said, "Put that thing away," to me. Yeah, I'm looking at the faces. I mean, I've got about 3 or 4 that I just like, I think the only use for them was for right now, so that we could just say, we all have them. Or, "You're squeaking again." Oh, that was a good one. Different ones. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to buy 25,000 flutes? That was another one. This was when I bought my 3rd flute. So others and our perception of that can really be a lot of friction. That can be a big obstacle. So how do we work with that? Different ways. First of all, starting off is just think about when you're practicing and how you can get in a comfort zone, what time of day is going to work for you, considering other people, considering your space. So these are 3 biggies: other people and how they influence us, the space itself, we're going to talk about that very soon, and then another one that comes up that's very real is, do you have physical discomfort later in the day? When is it for you that you may have some discomfort and you'd do better if you were practicing at a different time of the day? Okay, so these are, and there are many more. We could probably go through 3 pages of questions of where the friction is. The main thing is I want you to look for the friction. What is derailing you? Is it a physical thing? Is it a practice segment? Is it a emotional issue? Whatever it is, start to say, "Oh, look at that. I felt myself shut down right then. What's the obstacle?" All right, and then we can take a look at it. And then removing distractions and hyper-focus. So having divided focus, having talked to a number of other music teachers, and there are some online with us here, it's really incredible to see how people are trying to multitask when they're trying to learn something. And so to give yourself permission for 5 or 10 minutes at a practice time to remove any obstacles that divide your attention. So one of the ones that are kind of obvious, but maybe not, is I have a smartphone. I have an iPhone, and I do a lot on that, but I have a separate timer and a separate metronome that I use so that I don't have to look at my phone when I'm practicing, because we all know what happens. I'm just going to quickly check if that email came through. Oh, did she respond to that on Facebook? Oh, did my deposit go through? Whatever it is, it's so common that we're going to be distracted by our phone. So setting yourself up for success. Okay. And that undivided focus is probably what matters most, okay? The other idea is sort of just really to take yourself off of autopilot, which you'll hear more than once today. You want to maximize your minutes with the instrument, so not to get too casual about it. What can you do in 3 minutes? You know how when you've got something to do and you say, "Oh gosh, I have to get this done in 20 minutes because I have to leave to go to the grocery store," whatever. Give yourself that kind of urgency. I'm going to do this in 3 minutes. This is the one thing that I'm going to do today. Okay, so if you can use a timer. I often do that. 5 minutes, I'm not going to worry about the dishes, the laundry, the cat, the this and that, and to really give yourself that time of focus. Maximizing the minutes with your instrument. We're going to go next into breaking things down into very small practice segments. and using a metronome or a percussion mechanism. Just finishing these points up here before we move on. Use slow, intentional, and correct repetitions to attain fluency and expressiveness. So basically, if you practice one little part wrong, bingo, you found your segment. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. And it's not wrong, it's just, you know, it's not what's written and what you're expecting to hear. So what you want to do is never gloss through an area when you are playing it incorrectly. Is stop right there, because what happens is, as we wire this in, this sort of blueprint happens in our brain, like for real. The brain will continue to get reinforced with the wrong pattern, as opposed to opening it up, like putting it under a microscope for a minute and getting it right, even if we play it out of time for a bit. So really getting the memory, the muscle memory sequence as you want it, and then bringing in rhythm. The last one that I've got listed is, what is your perfect time of day to practice? Ideally, we're going to kind of take a look at what's going to happen soon, but we want to think about practicing a couple of times, 2-3 times a day, super short, and why we're going to find out. But if you were to practice just once during the day, what is your ideal time? Physically, we've talked about, but when we talk about your perfect time of day to practice, think mentally, because this work that we're doing with segmenting, casual practice can happen anytime, but when we're talking about deliberate practice, this takes some effort. So what is your perfect time of day that you can think best? When is your best cognitive time of the day? So I'm going to do a 1-minute journal prompt for you, and here's what I'd like you to do. Do a little star next to what applies to you, and then also the last one here, other obstacles for yourself. This is an actual picture of my desk when I was creating the musician's practice journal and how to wrap all this together. And it's like, how do you even start? It's all over the place, you know? And then I feel bad that I didn't get it. No, it's too vague. It's too random. So that was the inspiration for this picture. And so other obstacles for yourself. So go ahead and highlight what it is for you that are obstacles, and now go ahead and list what other obstacles you have. Okay, 1 minute. All right, taking about 10 seconds to wrap that up. Okay, and moving right along. Get your game on, and don't forget a feedback loop. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. You'll have the handout, but I want to get to our segmenting. So we're really creating success, setting ourselves up for success by creating a great music practice space. We talked about the gym analogy. This is the similar thing. You're not finding a gym necessarily, but you're setting up your music space. Getting yourself a dedicated, tool set, metronome, timer, journal, calendar, whatever it is for you. Different things that you need set up, ready to go, so when you go to practice, you don't have to go find things. You can treat it almost like a musical altar. Bring in some pieces. Maybe you've created a vision board. Maybe you have some special objects that remind you and connect you to why you want to play the music that you want to play. This is a place where we embrace our beloved musical hobby. Okay, and removing the distractions, the phone and other things that we know about. The other piece is to reinforce, get into a state of gratitude before practicing. A deep breath, a musical mantra, anything that you can quickly, like Tony Robbins says in his trainings, getting into this peak state. You want to get into a mental state, even if it's a breath. But here's where we start to wire and cue the habit. We want to get excited. Here's something I do. I play a song. I play a song that I want to play eventually. And I'll even not necessarily listen to the whole song, but I'll put it on and I'll be getting ready to, doing these things, and I'll be listening to that song. Or you could hum something that gets you excited and enthusiastic about what you're about to do. The big thing is to come off of autopilot. So you're not just moving through the motions, but you really have something in mind. And then here's something we haven't talked about before, but in terms of deliberate practice, what we need is a feedback loop. So we need either a mirror is a feedback loop. We can see ourselves. Recording yourself is an incredibly effective one. And then, of course, a private teacher or a group, some sort of a feedback loop accelerates your progress and is a necessary ingredient. I'm not one that spends a lot of time baking in the kitchen, but say I'm making a cake, like flour. Like the feedback loop is like flour. You've got to have a feedback loop if you want to progress. And lots of options that way. Okay, here we go. Segmenting your music practice. This is why we're here today. I'm going to explain it, and then we're going to dive into 3 examples, and hopefully you're going to get the hang of it. You're going to get good at this. You can be a detective in your own musical practice and say, oh, that's how I break it down more. So most people trip up at this point because we don't know exactly what to practice, and that's the whole idea of segmenting. So you're like a deer in the headlight type of a reaction. Practice at best can be mindless, wandering, and random. And so what we're going to do is sort of troubleshoot and reduce things down to what is an easy motion. That is the goal. One easy thing that we're going to isolate, and that's your segment. That could be your segment for one day. It could be your segment for a week, depending on how quickly you feel comfortable with it. So how do we find out what that is? Okay, now the goal, looking at the big picture here, is we're going to find 3 specific challenge areas and focus on them. Specific challenge areas, obstacles, friction, all the same word. All we're trying to do, concept is we're just trying to find segments, okay? One question that you want to ask yourself is, when you're thinking about practice, is what I'm practicing getting me toward my goal? And if not, this middle part, I can't emphasize it enough. Maybe I can even highlight it here. Do not waste your time on parts or songs that are not problems or things that you want to play. Okay, so you can do that later, but just get your segment done. Iron the little wrinkle in the shirt, and then the shirt's ready, and then you can still have fun doing other things. But if you want to make progress, just get this done first, maybe. Look for challenge areas. Where does it fall apart? So if you're playing through something and then all of a sudden it slows down and falls apart, bingo, there's your segment. All right, it's as easy as that. Identify the problem, and it often comes down to a short passage or even just a 3-note transition or something like that. So when we come to that, the technique I use, maybe different teachers use different things, but we're going to just take the mechanics, the notes themselves as long notes, disregard the rhythmic pattern, get the muscle memory right, and then we'll bring the rhythm back in. Here's my example. Here's where the examples begin. We've got several. Feel free to get up and stretch if you have glazed over at all. This is a good time to take a big breath and really focus in on this part of the training. So the example in here is chords. Using that as the example, that's a big category. And now, how can I break it down? And this is the question I invite you to learn to say to yourself. How do I break it down? Can I break it down more? How do I make it smaller? How do I make it smaller? Until there's no other breaking it down option. So chords. Okay, I'm going to break that down into chord progressions. Okay. I'm learning to play the flamenco guitar, so this has been, this is a real example. So I want to be able to play a chord progression, and in fact I want to learn to play the Andalusia cadence using D minor, C9, B flat 6, A flat 2. Okay, that's just the progression. That's a lot. There's just no way. Like, I'm just more of a beginner. I can't do that quite yet. What do I need to break it down to? The first two, the D minor to the C9. That's still a lot for me. Chord progressions are hard for me still. Okay, so now I'm going to give it structure. I'm going to go, how fast? I'm going to go 60 beats per minute, and I'm going to play a chord every 4 beats. So the beat hits, I've got my metronome going. 1, 2, 3, change. 1, 2, 3, change. And I'm going back between 2 chords. And maybe even before I do a metronome, I have to just figure out which finger moves first and which finger moves. I didn't have to break it down to that piece because I knew the 2 chords enough, but I wasn't able to do it to the beat. Okay, now, once I can do that with, this may be a surprise, 70 to 90% proficiency. I'm not working toward perfection. I'm working toward 1 to 3 minutes, and that's it. Okay, and this idea of a sprint will come up a little bit later. So it's sort of like a sprint here. I'm doing it for a very short amount of time. Now the next thing, I can do it, and now I'm going to do it so I can change and do it every 2 beats, and then I can change and do it every 1 beat. Now that might take me a week, but the initial segment was changing from the D minor to the C9 at this time and how often. The other one that you can put in if you want is, like I say, 1 to 3 minutes to 70 to 90% proficiency, and then leave it alone. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We've got our first example, and Lori is a beginner Native American style flute player. She has a high spirits 5-hole flute. She has a strong desire to play flute. I'm going to stop the share for a minute so we can say hello to Lori and just hear a little bit about what inspired her to learn to play the flute. Go ahead, Lori. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Thank you. And hi, everybody. So yeah, I just very simply, I started actually, I have not considered myself a musical person in my life at all. I'm an artistic person, not a musical person. So that's one of my obstacles to get over. But a couple years ago, I started learning to play the frame drum, mostly for healing and ritual, meditation, my own, just like she said, hobby musician. And love the drum. I've always loved drums. And one of my drum teachers introduced the native flute as another instrument that could be played on the pentatonic scale, or like kind of, you can't really do it wrong, for people who find it difficult to play, the flute was a great instrument. And I've always loved the flute, and a very relaxing sound to me. So, so really, the same reason as the drum, playing the flute to for my own joy and relaxation, healing, and to share with others in those kinds of healing and meditative spaces. Did you want me to say something?
Great. Thank you so much.
You know my
Um,
problem.
I'll, I'll walk us through. Yeah, I'll walk us through the story, and then we'll walk through and identify the segment, and that's what we're doing. So perfect. Okay. Okay. So Lori wrote in. She has 2 obstacles she is wanting to overcome. Lori wants to get comfortable playing a specific song, and I have it up just so we have a visual. But to recognize that Lori took massive action toward her goal. She acquired a flute. She found a recording to listen to. She downloaded the song sheet. And then she came up to an obstacle. And so just very briefly, I'll show you what the obstacle is. And I know there's a few flute players on here, so you'll just be able to see that. So here's the song. This is in the High Spirits book. And if you can just, you don't have to be a flute player to recognize this. I've highlighted the two areas that we can see. If you look at this flute and this flute, it's the same note. But then when we go from the second flute diagram to this one, 2 fingers change. Okay, 2 fingers change. And then we go through the piece a little bit. This is happening more and more. It happens again here. But then here's another one. So we have all the holes covered, and then we only have 1 hole covered. So those is where she got derailed. Okay, so, and I'll share, because Lori's story is something that I feel like we can all relate to. So she said, I haven't worked with it yet, and next I was going to re-listen to the video and hear the melody. I see a few places where I need to lift 2 or more fingers at the same time. Maybe that is an advanced skill, not sure, but learning to lift more than 1 finger and then placing it down at a time is something that I would like to work toward. I see that there's a place in the song where you have to lift, multiple fingers. Yikes. Okay. So let me share the screen, and this is sort of a fast forward version of how we break it down, but we're going to do this a few times, so hopefully it's going to sink in terms of this skill. So here, what I want to do is I want to break it down into 1 to 3 segments. I'm breaking it down into 3 segments. The segment 1 is the octave F, the high octave F, to the C, or the 5, for those flute players out there. The high octave to the 5th interval, or the C. Okay, the second one could be the C, the 5th interval, to the low F, home note 1. And the third interval can be F to F, home to octave back. Okay, so those can be 3 segments. How long? 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay, think about this as, right, and we're going to talk more about sprints later, but it's something that, you have to do, and it's a short amount of time, and you're super hyper-focused. You're off of autopilot. And how fast? So we want, how can I get more specific? Say 50 beats per minute, 1 to 3 times a day. And how do we know we're doing it right? Well, at some point, we're experimenting with the placement of the fingers on the holes until the tone is excellent. That's what we're looking for. So we might have to shift, practice moving up and down. Oh, I'm moving 1 at a time. It's sounding warbly. How do I get it? And so when we're in our sprint, we're going to refine, self-refine, self-refine. How do we do this? This is a great time for a feedback loop. Throw your phone on, go to the camera. This is the only time I like to use my phone in a practice, but it's very useful for this reason. Put on record, get all nervous, get the whole adrenaline thing going. That's great, because you know what? You'll learn to get acclimated to that state. And a lot of times when we play with others, we are in that state. We're in that high alert state. So get used to it. It's a little uncomfortable, and it is going to absolutely accelerate your learning. So that could be her feedback loop. And then between, she puts it for 30 seconds, and then put it down, relax the hands completely. Okay, so what we're seeing here are 3 segments. We're going to weave this into that interweaving that we talked about a little later. Now, I'm going to read this. I know you can all read, but you're welcome to sit back for a moment, close your eyes, see if you can relate to this story. This is Lori's second obstacle, and Lori, you're not alone. I think we all feel this way, have felt this way. Everybody can relate, but it's nice to know that we're not alone when we hear this. She says, I have the time, space, and desire to practice. I love watching other people teach and following along. That is fun. I write it down and take notes. But then if I pick up the flute or drum on my own, I begin to feel silly. I know I can just play around, but if I think about actually, quote, practicing something, end quote, I start to think, quote, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know much about music, and am I doing it correctly? I begin to doubt myself. I feel embarrassed. I think, can I do this on my own? And this is, I so appreciate your vulnerability on this, Lori, and I so understand, and, may this help all of us. Start self-shaming or doubting that I even learned anything at all, which I know I have, and I can become paralyzed and uncertain. Whew, so powerful. Also, as I watch many teachers play the frame drum and play the flute, I feel good about what I've learned, but overwhelmed by all there is to learn, all the styles, ways to learn, skills. There are so many different things I could be practicing, not sure what would be most helpful or how to proceed. Is there an order to learn things? Is it better to practice for an hour a day or break it up into 3 15-minute practice times? Is it better to work on one skill and to try to master it and then move on and do a shorter piece on various skills and continue to let them develop? And do different people learn different ways? So, is there a right way? So this is like maximum friction, right? If this doesn't derail you, wow. So this is what I'd love for you to do is put in the chat now, and supporting Lori, supporting each other. Can you relate? Just give me a comment. Give Lori a comment here, so we can talk about how Lori can move forward. We're going to do this actually when we do the second. We're going to talk about this emotional piece. So, yeah, let me see the chat. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right? Can relate 100%. I can relate to everything. Heart exclamation point. I'll wait for a minute because I just feel like this is so important to really know that this is real. Yeah. Obstacles can stop, Rachel. Yep, especially the computer. Oh, the technology. Okay, so you can continue to watch that chat. Okay, how can Lori move forward? Like I said, we're going to group the two volunteers on this particular question because it's this very similar issue. Yes, I can relate to this. Yeah. Okay, great. And here's our second volunteer. So Maisie is an intermediate Native American style flute player. And let me just stop the share very quickly. We'll say hello to Maisie. Good. So you're welcome to unmute and just say hello for a minute, and then we'll go into your seconds.
Hello for a minute.
30 seconds or just...
I totally relate to everything that Lori's going through and have those same issues and some different ones too. So.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. And Maisie, I'll ask you, you can unmute and mute as you want to as we're going through your example. I'm going to walk through it like we did with Lori's, but you are welcome to ask a question as we come along through your material and segment. Okay, so Maisie's first obstacle on her D flute, hitting the low D, just about never can get it from scratch. Better from note 3 to 1. Okay, so this first one is a muscle memory obstacle, and our goal is to break it down into the smallest possible segment. How can we break it down? Can I break it down more? When you go to a segment after this workshop and you start to do this, you write your segment. The question to ask yourself is, can I break it down more? Can I be more specific? This is the work of a sprint.
Can you explain more about the sprint?
Absolutely. So a sprint is like, you go to the gym, you did all the things, the one and dones. You joined, you got the sneakers, you got the this, you got the that. You're finally on the treadmill. you're walking and you're like, you know, I got a wedding to go to in a month, and I really want to wear that dress. Like, and I know how to get there. And part of it is that I got to get my cardio on here. And so for a very short and strenuous moment of time, you crank up your treadmill to, 6.5, and you're like, oh, this is not comfortable, but I'm doing it. And then, and you go. That's what we do with music. That's a musical sprint. It's hard. What makes it hard? It makes it hard because you've got your metronome on. Now, the metronome doesn't have to be fast. In fact, it's better if the metronome is slow. But the metronome itself being on is hard, and then maybe you have a timer or a goal. I am going to do this for 1 minute. I'm going to do this for 1 minute, and here it is. So she can take this idea, and I'm going to walk us through it exactly. Okay, 60 beats per minute. So this is the nuts and bolts. Metronome. 60 beats per minute. Timer. I'm going to say I'm going to do it for 3 minutes. I'm not going to do it for 3 minutes for us here, but whatever the goal is. 30 seconds would be great. I've got my D flute. Now, if you have your D flute around, Maisie is muted. You're all muted, but you're welcome to try this idea. So she's trying to go from 3 to 1. She's missing, which means she's probably here or here. There's something happening. So what she wants to do is overshoot it. She wants to be able to feel the bottom edge of the hole. And so she's just going to first mentally practice it. She can see and imagine, and then she can do it mechanically without playing the flute. Okay, I can feel the bottom edge of the hole. Okay? Lori's, yours was here to here. I can feel it. I'm feeling my fingers come up and down at the same time. You're working on leaps. Okay? So we're down here 3 to 1. And then she begins, and she just refines it as she goes. And she goes for 30 seconds. So that is a good example of a sprint. It's a very short, pretty strenuous, and it will accelerate what we're trying to do with our music. Okay. And I like to say no more than, if it depends on what you're doing, but if you're doing something that you're really trying to fix a problem, get over an obstacle, keep it short. And then the other part that I really want to say about this is, we're going to talk about this one more time. So this is a point that'll be reinforced. Imagine the segment, and she works on it, and then put it down and walk away. Do something non-cognitive for about 10 minutes, because the research shows that the brain spends the next 10 minutes figuring it out. Have you ever tried something really hard? You didn't quite get it, but you tried, and then you left it alone and you did something else, and you came back and it was like, whoa, it's there. That's what happens. So we want to take advantage of that cognitive in the background task that the brain is doing after the sprint, after the segment sprint. Okay, these are all just words. Don't get caught up in the words, but the idea is give yourself something to do, and don't expect perfection from yourself. It's not about that. Just work on it and then put it down. Okay, so that's another sprint. That's a good segment example. Okay, and then how do we integrate that? So say she's got it, and 2 days later she's like, I got it, I've got the 3 to 1. So then the next part, this is MM, is muscle memory. So the next one, she would expand on that she might do a 4, 3, 1. These are intervals on the flute. If you're not familiar, it's just the next hole up. Okay, she'd go from 4, 3, 1, 3 in a loop. Do, 60 beats per minute, 1 to 3 times a day, 30-second sprint. So the segments should be very short and very pointed. Okay, so the second obstacle that Maisie had, the issue of fear. What if I try to play if I try hard to play and still make, you know, what she feels this lousy music, is it music? If it's lousy, how can Maisie overcome this fear in small bite-sized chunks? So a feedback loop could be helpful, and then the inner dialogue. So that is the next piece of this. So I want to talk just very briefly about that. We all go through this, I feel, whether we're on the treadmill trying to do a sprint that you haven't done for 20 years, or you're trying to play something. So what's important is to have some sort of reward. Remember I said at the beginning, do like a little musical mantra, you do your work, and then this is a dopamine mylar, like this is just a whole thing around the mentality of it, is have a reward system. Do your work and then have a reward system. The reward system can be, I'm going to just show you a few examples. You could print out a year calendar. And on the day that you practiced, even if you played one note, because what you're doing right now is establishing the habit. The habit is what we're working on here, not the music itself, the habit of, to support. Do a check mark. Every day you start seeing that, you got momentum going, you're feeling good about yourself. Just like we'd keep a log, maybe if we were losing weight or being in the gym, whatever it is. Obviously, this is a whole work in the musician's practice journal. This is great. You can put it on your calendar. Something where you're sort of literally like, good job, you did it. You want to end on a feeling of rewarding yourself, acknowledging yourself. And that little piece, as silly as it might feel the first time you do it, is massively effective. So that when you get the cue, oh, time to practice. Okay, what are you going to do? Even just smiling will just start to ignite all the internal action to get you happy. I play a song. That's what I do. Okay, all right, I'm going to do it. Someday I'm going to be able to play like this, you know. And then afterwards, so you want to kind of bookend it with a great feeling. And then it's not so hard when you do it. So these pieces, even though they sound so simple, these are big elements of the work that we're, the new habit that we're trying to develop here. So we are getting through our section here, and with this idea of the inner dialogue, what I'd like to generate here is put in the chat, what is something that we can tell ourselves when, not if, when that inner dialogue happens. Different ideas that we just picked up. So a couple of ideas for me is, I just say to myself, you know, Rome was not built in a day. I did this for 30 seconds. It was okay, not great, but I did it and I checked off, and I'm now going to go and take a walk that takes me 1 minute down the block and back and integrate, and then go do something else and come back later. So that's one thing. The other thing, the family members with the classic comments, put that thing away. That's like unbelievable, you know, support system. Hello, you know, what is it that we say? I don't know. Don't let the turkeys get you down. You know, I'd like to see them try to pick up an instrument. Whatever it is that you can sort of just have as your sort of internal, use humor or use self-armor, but let me see your comments. What are the chat? Ideas that you can do to overcome that feeling, like, you know, at least I'm trying to learn to play, or, yeah, you're okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah, I know I will get there. I'm just reading the chat. Yeah, I'm a great pianist. Excellent. Yeah. One more. I'm enough. This is enough. How about this is hard? I'm doing hard work. I'm doing a sprint on the treadmill at the gym. Good for me. Okay. I have to start somewhere. Absolutely. Yeah. And then a year later, you look back and you say, wow, look how far I've come. These little sprints. Segmenting all the way. The world needs to hear my music, world peace. Rachel, beautiful, beautiful. Absolutely. Sweet. Yeah, and just knowing it was so interesting working with these two ladies, like so much of it is this piece, is this, wow, this is for me and I love it in this moment. Excellent. All right, so now let's dive into interweaving them. And so here's how that could work. This is another piece. Remember we were just talking about doing the segment, thinking of it like a sprint. Like it's some real work. And then going away, and that 10 minutes, and integrating that. This, what we're about to talk about, give a stretch. This is another thing that can transform your music practice. So now we've identified a few segments, and there's so much more to do, of course, but I hope at least you're getting a little idea of how that works. How do I make it more specific? How do I make it easier? If it's too hard, it just has to get broken down or slowed down. Okay, but say we have 3 now, and this idea of interweaving them. This is very interesting in terms of the cognitive result. So here's what research shows, is say you have 3, what you want to do is, we're going to use the example, Lori's segments, the high F to the C to the low F, and the octave F to F. Okay, those are her 3 segments. So ideally what she would do to maximize the effectiveness of how the brain processes them is she would segment them, and she would do one of them for 30 seconds. She'd do the first one, the high F to the C, and she does it for 30 seconds. Sprint. Then puts her flute down, shakes out her hand, takes a breath, goes right to the second segment. And she plays the C to the low F. Second segment, 30 seconds, and she's sprinting. All right. Puts the flute down, takes a breath, takes a stretch, sit down, segment 3, 30 seconds, octave F to F. And then to interweave it, she could start again. So say Lori says, I have 5 minutes to practice today. That's a lot of segments. We're talking 30 seconds here. She can get a bunch done. If she does the 3 different segments and then does that exact sequence again and that exact sequence again, however it is in the brain, it just works more effectively. So that interweaving is something that you can keep in mind as you find a bunch of segments and then say, okay, I am doing this for a very short amount of time, and then this one for a very short amount of time, and then rinse, repeat, and then put it down. Yeah, super cool. Okay, and these are other variables. How long? 30 seconds. I'm using that as an example. You want to do it for 15 seconds? It's better than 0, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. Do it till you've got it, then put it down. Once you've got it in your muscle memory, you want to leave it alone so that we're not practicing what we already know and we don't need to work on. Okay. And then once those are done, remember we were talking about that very last one, like give yourself a thumbs up, put a check mark on a thing, attaboy, whatever it is, but you want to do something fun at the very end. Play a 1-breath solo on your flute. Always end on a high note so that you associate, we associate our practice with being rewarded somehow. So the reward, I love check marks. What can I say? It's so simple. But, check mark, yep, I did it. I did my, it doesn't have to be logging the minutes. It can be sometimes, but something like that. Finish with a reward at the end of each practice. Give yourself a big acknowledgement with a literal or metaphorical check mark, some sort of self-praise and recognition. Integration, I'm going to read it just for the recording here and for our own reinforcement. Take a break for the next 10 minutes. Do something that doesn't require a lot of thinking. Give your brain time to finish the integration work. Repeat. Give your brain time to finish the integration work. This occurs over the next 10 minutes. There is no need to insist on the perfection of your segment. Just something that is slightly uncomfortable. Maybe not as uncomfortable as a sprint on the treadmill. That'd be pretty uncomfortable. But, it's got to be out of the comfort zone. You're asking your muscles, your brain to do something it doesn't know how to do already. So it's a little uncomfortable. And that's when you know you're in the zone. You are learning something new. Great job. It's better to come back later, do a mini practice, and use the integration time to your advantage. All right, and then 2 other pieces just as bonuses to think about. Really interesting. Years and years ago, I lived in Colorado Springs, and the Olympic Training Center is there. And I went to tour there, and there was one of these buildings, and they had visualization stations. So they would hook the athletes up to all these, things, and they would have them visualize running their race, doing their event. And as they were going through it mentally, their muscles, everything's firing in the same sequence. And so our mental practice, and looking at the research with musicians, the mental practice of being able to play this beautifully, really just like really dreaming into it, is very, very powerful. I would say right up there with interweaving and segments and like that. So this mental rehearsal that we can do when we're not with our instrument is really great. We can walk through the piece, and then the visualization is where it gets fun, of course, because you can imagine. And one of my favorite quotes, Albert Einstein, imagination is more important than knowledge. You can imagine you playing it like you really want to play it. And that's going to sort of feed a different part of the effort. Yeah. Good. So we are getting so close to time. I'm going to zoom into our last, I guess we're on Zoom, so different use of the word, but I'm going to go to our last handout here, and then we'll just open it up and on we go. So what we covered today was your desire to play your music, and I hope that you got some illuminations from that. How to recognize and remove obstacles. Get your game on, and don't forget the feedback loop. All right, that's going to really accelerate your progress. Learn to segment your music practice. I'm going to say it took some time for me to really get specific enough. So if you don't do it right, it's the same thing. Just start working with this and the questions. How do I make it easier? Okay, I've just got these 2 fingers up and down. That's all I'm practicing right now. That's all I'm practicing. How long? Get specific. And then interweaving your segments. 30 seconds, break. 30 seconds, break. 30 seconds, break. Walk away. All right. So our musical practice ritual can hopefully be reworked a little bit. Having your space set up, having a fun cue for yourself, even just smile and take a big breath and say, I got this, or turn on a song. Then these mini practices, interweaving segments and integrating afterwards, and immediate reward, like woohoo, whatever it is for you, but do it, and your brain will start getting excited about just a mini practice. 3 top takeaways. This is what I'm looking for from you all today. What were your 3 top takeaways today? What was it? Please blow up the chat and let me know what's going on. And then where do you go from here? You can, of course, reach me, go to musicianspracticejournal.com, but you can independently work with the journal of the printouts that you will receive. You can join us on Saturday mornings at the weekly journaling retreat and let me know if you want. We go through this and we set up our week for the whole week. So then we sit down and practice and we journal. And if you like to journal, you definitely would want to like to journal if you join this group. We journal for a little bit, and it's really insightful work. And then the music practice personal training is something that I offer just to get people on track and know how to do that. So let's see our chat. 3 top takeaways. Yeah. Something tiny can derail me. Yeah. And it is. It's like, oh, wow. That's all it is. It's just breaking it down to this little thing. And perceptions. Good. Very nice. Very nice. Great. Getting into a state of joy and gratitude before practice. Yeah, we want to rewire our association with our practice. a vision board would be great. You know, having that up somewhere. My plan is to have do a vision board again, because I love doing them frequently, and then having my little just check mark. I might do more, but I'll at least do that. Yeah, excited. Mini segments, small and manageable. Awesome concept of creating a ritual for practice. Yeah, great. Super. Well, we are just about at time. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for bringing your comments, and especially for the 2 volunteers that worked with this. And you're welcome to open up your unmute and just say to everyone, hello, goodbye. I'm going to ask you all to unmute, and we'll.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Very good.
Amy. Really enjoyed it. Got lots out of it.
Yes.
Great to have you all here.
Thank you, Amy.
A lot of energy. Really good. All right.
Best, Amy.
Enjoy.
Yeah.